What is material variance and what is the use of material variance information? Well, to start with, material variance is, as the name implies, some variation with regard to material used in the operational process. Now, there are numerous types of material variance. First, your material cost. The way that you calculate that is what is your standard or expected cost versus your actual cost. So the difference between the two is your material cost variance. Now, what about your material price variance? This is where you have a standard pricing that you expect for the material that goes into the project. You subtract that from the actual price you paid and then multiply it by the quantity, and that would be the value then of the difference between materials that were used or required as part of the project. Next, material usage. What is this? Well, this is a quantity-based variance measure. So you'd look at the standard quantity that you would require for this type of project and subtract that from the actual quantity. So once you have the difference there, then you could multiply that difference by the standard price to determine material quantity usage, a value of it. Okay, now what is, when you have a mixture, what is the material mix variance? Well, this is a slightly more complicated calculation. Basically, you take what's called the revised standard quantity, and you get the difference between that and the actual quantity that was required, and you multiply it by price. So what is the revised standard quantity? Well, it's the standard quantity of a single material, okay, divided by, so the standard quantity of one material is the numerator. The denominator is the standard quantity of all materials. So this amount of material over all the material required. So you get a percentage there. Then you would multiply that percentage by the total actual quantities that was required. So you're using this metric, right? This fraction to understand what proportion of the total quantities required were used, and so, or should be used in this type of project. So, and that's why you call it your revised standard, because once again, you're focusing in on one percentage based upon the entire lot, right? So what percentage would you be using times the actual quantity, okay? And using that minus, again, so that would be your revised quantity. Subtract that from the actual quantity so you get the difference, and then you get the value by multiplying it by your price at hand. All right, next, the final calculation is material yield. What is material yield? Well, you take your actual yield, okay, from your operations, and what is the variance there? You subtract the standard yield that you would expect from this type of operation, okay? Now, the difference there, you multiply it by the standard material cost per output of the operation, okay? Now, we said actual yield and standard yield. Well, we know what the operation actually yielded. What is the standard yield from that type of operation? Well, you look at actual material usage and you divide it by the standard usage, okay, per unit of output. So actual usage per output, standard usage per output as a fraction, all right? If you subtract this from the, once again, the actual yield that you got from the operation and then multiply it again, so you're getting that difference multiplied by the standard cost, okay? Not the standard yield, the standard cost per output, that will give you your material yield. So if you use these equations, it will give you a lot of insight and a lot of information, once again, about material variance, and that will help not only with planning and decision making going forward, but also as part of the reporting process. It allows you to accurately describe to your stakeholders where the variances came from and why, and you can use these matrices to once again demonstrate or display to what extent each component varied from your expected or your standard variances.